Hello, my sweet friends. Today I have such a treat for you. It was such a treat for me. I got to spend some time talking with and asking questions to Dr. Z, PhD, and she was absolutely phenomenal. For those of you who don't know Dr. Z, she is an incredible psychologist who specializes exclusively with transgender and non binary adults. Dr. Z empowers you to own who you are, even if you're afraid, to reclaim yourself and break free from dysphoria. Dr. Z is brilliant, compassionate, beautiful, and wonderfully direct. And today, we are going to talk about how to build intimate relationships, whether it's friendships or romantic partners. And I hope you love our conversation as much as I did, and it provides you a lot of value. So enjoy. Dr. Z, PhD, also just absolutely love that name. So fitting for YouTube. Um, Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so thrilled to share this space with you.
Well, I'm super, super excited to be here. I got really excited when you invited me because I got an opportunity to learn about you and what you do, and I was really stoked to see what you do. So I'm just really excited and honored. Thank you so much.
Yes. Well, thank you too. I love when we get to collab with other people who have the same kind of passion and interest and desire to just spread more love and acceptance and support people, because that's what we all really want, is to feel loved and accepted and that we can exist as we are. So my community actually was like, you have to reach out to Dr. Z. And I was like, because I was doing a live and I was like, oh, people were like, you need to collab with people. And I was like, well, give me some suggestions. And several people were like, Dr. Z. And I was like, oh, okay. So then I looked into you and I was like, oh my gosh,
God.
you're amazing.
That's really wonderful to hear. I love that about the community. I created my own sort of community on my YouTube channel where I constantly engage and talk to people who follow me. And when I do my interview series, I kind of pause them for some time. But when I did do my interview series, I would also get a lot of people reaching out to me saying, you have to interview this person or that person. And I just love that because I love being able to hear to the voices and to hear what people want to hear from. I think that's really, really important.
I agree with you. And I think what you provide is just so helpful, especially with your psychology background. It's just refreshing to know that you're coming with not only compassion, but with like the education and with all of the experience, because you have almost 2 decades of experience of working with the transgender community, right?
Yeah,
You're like,
I'm like, well, this is my 17th year, so I wouldn't overreach 2 decades, but yes, I do have over a decade for sure. I only work with transgender non-binary adults. That's pretty much all I do. I don't take on any other client issues at all. And that really enables me to be able to have a very direct and in-depth worldview into issues and struggles people going through and any kind of things that tend to come up for individuals when not only they're exploring their gender identity, but when they do decide to transition, those who feel like transition is for them, then all of the challenges and obstacles, some of the amazing things that come with that as well. I'm just very familiar with that, and I love talking about it. So I always say yes to anybody who wants to host me on their channels or anywhere else, because yes, I'd love to talk about us. Yeah, let's do it.
I love that. And so it's so great too that you specialize, because obviously you could have like done just the general population, a ton of different areas, but to specialize makes you very unique and special, right? Like, because you get to, I know a lot of times people are like, oh, I don't want to think of myself as an expert, but you probably are an expert when it comes, like, you can be an expert and still continue to grow and gain knowledge and all of that, right? But it seems like you would be like one of the go-to people if you are transgender or non-binary to really receive the support and the understanding and the depth.
Yes, I would say this way. I don't believe that anybody ever becomes an expert, right? And the minute you think you're an expert, you have to realize you're not. I would say this way, in terms of for somebody who perhaps have accumulated more knowledge and direct experience with a very specific population and a very specific challenge that the population faces, then I would say I'm probably way more specialized than somebody who had not had that experience. So in that way, just makes me more specialized in this field.
Yes, I love that. I remember going to school, we were always told like the expert is the individual. Nobody knows that person better than themselves. So they're the expert on themselves or their family, right? And so you just get to be that guide or that sounding board to help them know themselves more and dig deeper. So I am curious, okay, so with your 17 years of experience, what is the most underrated resource that you can think of for trans women?
I would say that the one that's really deeply underrated is connection to your community. Because we speak highly about connecting to community, but we don't really teach people how to adequately connect to community, especially with today. There's so much in social media. There's so many people on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. I mean, you name it. And when there's so many people on so many platforms, the depth and the significance of the content becomes very distilled. It doesn't become as rich, right? So it becomes very empty nutrient kind of not really caring much. So I think one of the resources for sure is to connect to community, but also to know what that community is for you. What does it mean for you personally? How to find that particular community, because community can really give you answers to so many things you're looking for, from who is the best doctor to how to get the letters for any kind of gender affirming procedures, to who's the best therapist in your area, to who to actually avoid, what are the red flags to watch out. I mean, it's really limitless, but you have to know how to find your community and how to connect to them, and that's a challenge in today's world.
That's such a good point, because I think it's so easy to say, just go build a community, just go meet people, just join a community. But I hear what you're saying. It's like, that's not always as easy or as simple to do as we make it seem, right? We're just like, oh, just go find a community. And then it's like, okay, but how do I find the community? And this one doesn't feel right. Or how do I join it? Or
Exactly.
I want to protect my privacy. I'm scared to join, all of these things. So that kind of leads me into what I wanted to talk with you about today. So lately I've been having a lot of conversations about building friendships or the loss of friendships with members in my community, like the listeners on my YouTube channel. And I thought, you would be really phenomenal to talk about this because you specialize with working with trans women. So I wanted to know, and I know you specialize with the just transgender community in general, but since my listeners are trans women or cross-dressers, I thought we'd kind of focus in on them. So a lot of them they feel really alone. They feel very isolated. Has been a lot of the comments that I've got, like the messages and stuff like that. And so like, how do you build a friendship? So I really wanted to know from your perspective, or from the tips that you have, the do's and don'ts of like building friendships, making friends as you're transitioning, or if you've already transitioned and you're living full-time as a woman, but you're feeling lonely and isolated. So how do we build that community? And even more than just a community, how do we build those like relationships, those friendships that are so satisfying?
Okay, so I'd like to narrow your question, because I think, and I have a feeling your listeners probably want to hear more about how to build relationships, and most importantly, intimate relationships. Intimate relationship is something that a lot of people ask me, especially if they're older adults, especially if their current relationship did not work out because they decided to transition. How do I then find a partner? How do I disclose that I'm trans? How do I, set up myself on a date? How do I do all of those things? And it becomes really challenging. One of the things that I always tell trans women that I work with, because that's particularly your audience, is that don't forget your personal standards. I think it's so incredibly important, because as trans women, a lot of them already being told by the world, you have a problem, right? The majority of the world is telling you you should not exist. You have a problem because you're a trans person. And on top of that, you have to deal with everything else and all the stigma and hardships that come with and after you transition. Of course, transition for a lot of adults brings also a lot of wonderful things. Getting closer to your authentic self, liberating yourself from gender dysphoria, confidence, feeling much more comfortable with yourself. But nonetheless, when you building yourself up against the brick wall of the world that has all the sharp spikes pointed at you, then psychologically what happens to you is that you're going to be prone to lower your standards, because you're going to feel lesser than. So the first thing that I tell people is forget about lowering your standards. Remind yourself that regardless of what the world is telling you, I mean, really, first of all, there's nothing wrong with you. Second of all, let's realize those who did go through any element of transition, or even without going through transition, getting in touch with our authentic gender, that takes one strong cookie to be able to do that. That takes a lot of resilience. It takes a lot of facing yourself, something that the rest of the world is afraid to do in so many other areas of their lives. So from the get-go, you're already internally so far ahead than the majority of the population. So just on a sheer fact of that alone, you need to raise your bar. Like I usually tell people, no, I mean, you're not going into any kind of dating relationships or looking for friends with the bar being lowered. I would say you're not a doormat. And you have to treat your inner self world of interpersonal relationship as you being somebody who's sovereign over the door of your heart, being sovereign in a sense of you have to choose who is coming into your life. Not what a lot of people, unfortunately, because of the way the world is treating them, are getting conditioned to do, almost being so grateful that they found friends and relationships. Like, no, you have a value to offer to another person. Don't forget that. And unless you step into the search for interpersonal relationship, whether they're intimate or just friendships, with a sense of I have value to give, and I'm going to be selecting who's going to come into my environment or into my life, you're going to attract the same vibration. If you step into it with insecurity, feeling like, oh my God, I'm so lucky that this person wants to go with me on a date, you're going to attract things you don't want to attract. So the first thing is raise your bar. Like, forget wherever the fuck the world is telling you. I don't know if I can curse on your channel. I don't know if that was okay, but you have to raise your bar because, I mean, really.
I love that. Like that gives me chills. It's so, so important and so just validating and affirming to hear you say that and to share that. And I think that is something that we can just like not even be aware of, that sometimes it just is like how we're acting, but we're not necessarily aware that we're lowering our standards. So I absolutely love that. Sometimes when I'm talking with people, we're like, even if you feel like the whole piece of the pie, you only have this little teeny tiny section because of the standards or because of what you want, there's still people in this section of the pie that are looking for someone like you.
Yes.
And what you bring to the table and what you have to offer. And I absolutely love it. It gave me chills too, just thinking about when you said, you're already ahead because you're living as your authentic self, which so many people are scared to do.
So many.
Oh, that's just brilliant. I love that. Also, just as a side note, we're starting like a little book club, and I saw you post that book, The Courage to be
Disliked.
to be disliked. And so that's the first book we're starting with.
Oh, good.
And so I think it's going to be phenomenal, but that is such an amazing, amazing tip, Dr. Z. Thank you.
Yeah, you have to, you really have to realize who you are as a person and what you've been through. And as a psychologist who also worked with just general population prior to specializing, and you yourself as somebody who works with people, we both can verify the fact that the majority of the population is lost. They are confused, they're lost, they're working in jobs they hate, they're married to partners they can't stand, they're presenting their life on social media, which is absolutely charade. There's so many individuals who are not authentic to themselves. And this is why when cis people say, oh my God, trans people are so brave, that's what they mean by brave. Not that you're so necessarily brave to go through everything, but you're brave enough to turn that mirror and look into that mirror, confront yourself, and go beyond confronting and actually do something about changing yourself for the better. And that's what where the bravery comes from. Because most of the people, I mean, really, to be honest, they're cowards, and I'm not afraid to call them that because they absolutely are.
No, I agree with you. That's so, so true. And that's exactly it. So many people are stuck in that people pleasing. I don't want anyone to be mad at me. I don't want to lose friends. I don't want to lose this life that isn't allowing me to be who I really am, or that I'm preventing myself from receiving the people, it's loving the real me. Do you know what I mean? That's like you're limiting your relationships. And that's what so many people do, regardless if you're trans or not. So many people are limiting themselves and the type of relationships and the fulfillment that they could receive if they just stepped into who they really are and allowed that vulnerability to bring in the right people into their life, to the right community, the right friendships, the right partners, all of that, the right career, on and on it goes, right? As soon as you embrace who you really are in any capacity.
Yes.
So do you have any other, besides like just
Yeah.
don't lower your standards, what else would these women be doing?
Yes. So some of the do's and don'ts that I would say is, if you're looking for friendships, it is very common for trans women to have a feeling or an assumption that in terms of friends groups, they have to form friends groups only with trans women, with other trans women. And while I think that's important because you'll have something common to resonate on, I think it's also important to broaden yourself to all other gender representations and not just to cis people. A lot of times I see trans women say, well, I'm a little uncomfortable making friendship with just maybe cis women, for example, because I feel like I don't have that perhaps childhood backdrop or childhood experiences or all those experiences that they have accumulated. So I feel like I'm an imposter, I'm trespassing, or I'm fraud. And all we say is that I guarantee you that those experiences don't define your womanhood. And for a lot of cis women, those experiences don't define those things either. There's a lot of cis women that had array of different experiences. There's no one single experience that we can package and say, this is what a womanhood looks like. So I say just broaden who you can be friends with, because the more you broaden yourself to other individuals, the richer your life is going to be. So don't be afraid to just go there. So that would be one of the, in terms of friendships. In terms of intimate relationships, I know that a lot of people feel that if they do disclose who they are, if they do disclose that they have transgender history, then they will be automatically rejected. One of the things, and I read this in one of the books, and I can't remember who wrote it because I'd love to give them credit, but it's not mine. They said that you have to look at the rejection as not a rejection, but as redirection. Because rejection is it's really not personal, first of all, because what is dating? When we go on a date, it's all about sampling stuff. It's like, to me, it's like a buffet. You've got to try if you really want to eat strawberries for the rest of your life, or if you really want to have, beef over chicken, for example. So dating to me is that you're really sampling a person. You're trying to see if you even like them. Remember the door thing of your heart. You're really trying to figure out if you want to let them into your life, not the other way around. So it's really important that when things don't work out, don't look at it as rejection. Look at it as almost as if universe is giving you to redirect yourself, because it's really telling you this person is not for you. It's not a good match. It's just as simple as that. And I know that sometimes it can be painful when you like the person a lot, but they're telling you that you're not a good match for them. But you have to realize that it's good things that they're telling you from the get-go that you're not a good match for them. It is a horrible, painful thing when you're 3, 6 months, few years into a relationship with them, and they have enough guts to tell you that you're not a good fit for them. So try to switch from seeing things as not a rejection, but really being redirected towards the right path. I think that's really, really important. Another do's and don'ts that I would recommend is, if people are using dating websites, not to be afraid to put their gender identity on it. This is very personal. Again, this is something that everybody has to decide for themselves. Some people, they decide, disclose later on. It's very personal. There's no judgment how you decide to do it. In my experience, what I've seen with people is that when you put it out there, when we put anything on Match.com or OkCupid or any of those websites, really what we're doing is you're trying to attract the right person, and you're trying to eliminate things that don't belong to you so that you don't waste your time on them. That's the key. So if I put down that I like to read romance novels, when in reality I like crime fiction, and I attract a partner that is like, oh my God, let's read Daniel Steele together. I'm like, oh shit, gotta read Daniel Steele. I hate Daniel Steele. But you said you love it. You're just wasting your time. And you're creating issues later on based on elements where you two don't match. So don't be afraid from the get-go. Really put down who you are as a person. And gender is part of that. Now people say, well, if I do that, I will attract less people. Yeah, maybe. But out of the pool of the lesser people you attract, you're going to have a more richer, more genuine people who are attracted to you versus a wider scope of people. And then you have to go and discern through them and waste your time. So those are, I would say, my biggest do's and don'ts.
I love that. And I also want you to add a little bit more of how you kind of see. So with the redirection, sometimes we could jump into like that all or nothing thinking, right? Where it's like, oh no, this person redirected me, right? They let me know that, oh, we're not actually a good fit. Do you have like a quick like tip or something people say or do to kind of remind themselves to get out of that all or nothing thinking, like everyone's gonna be this way then, instead of thinking like, oh wait, my enoughness or my value doesn't depend on this one person that I didn't connect with, that it is actually for my benefit. Like a little to get out, you know what I'm saying? Like getting out of that all or nothing, like, oh man, well, if this one person did it, then no one's gonna like me, or I'm not attractive.
Yeah, I think if you're the type of person that has all or nothing thinking to begin with, that means you're going to have to do just a little bit more work because you're going to have to retrain your mind. Our minds are like a map. It's like a map with different streets and different signs and different alleyways. And every time you think about something, you're driving a car, a particular alleyway. Now, if things happen to you and somebody says, you're not a good fit for me, and you got accustomed taking that car directly through rejection street, which means you immediately feel, I am nothing, nobody will ever love me, I will never find a partner, your brain automatically going to go there. So what you need to do is you need to retrain your brain. You really need to work on retraining yourself from taking the same route to now taking redirection route and constantly consciously reminding yourself, okay, that's good. It's good that they're letting me know I'm not a good fit for them. That means that they're not a right partner for me. That means that the right partner is still out there for me. And the more you do that, the more you train your brain to go from catastrophizing to looking at things much more level headed. And that's how things really work. So it's just going to take a little bit more work. But I really think it's going to be worth it because you have to, when I started this YouTube channel, and as you know, people who try to outreach other people, we started newsletters and all those things. I was so conscious about how many people unsubscribe. You get that in the end of a week or in the end of a month, you have X amount of people unsubscribe. And I would tend to take it personally. And then I realized this is great. I'm glad X amount of people unsubscribe. That means my content is not for them. Mm-hmm. That means that they're letting me know I'm not for them. And that's great because I'm not for everybody. So when you're dating, you also have to realize you're not for everybody. You're not meant to be for everybody. And you also have to remember the times when you went on a date and you were the one who told the person that they're not a good fit. Were you actually rejecting them? Honestly, no. You probably would say, no, that it's nothing personal. I just didn't like XYZ about them, right? So you have to realize it's the same thing for another person too. It's not really personal. They're just letting you know, not a good fit.
I love that. And it saves everyone so much time, right?
Yes.
When you're like, oh, okay. And when you're not taking it personal and you just are like, okay, it's just, we're not a good fit moving forward. And I can definitely relate whenever I see that people unsubscribe at first, it's like, oh, and then it's like, wait, this is a good thing. They're just not the right fit for me. They're not getting the value out of the content. And so these other people are, and that's what's important. So.
And it saves you time and it saves you money because you have to pay for the marketing. The more people you have on newsletters, the more you pay. So they're actually doing you a favor by actively telling you this is not for me versus you trying to figure out if you need to let them go. So it's you have to look at it as a benefit versus a detriment when you go out on a date.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so any other tips that you want to share around building friendships or intimate relationships before I ask you some of the questions from my listeners?
The only other one that I think about is really strongly emphasize confidence. I know that for trans women, a lot of things that will bear down on confidence is going to be external. I know that for a lot of trans women who are also lean toward more feminine spectrum and identify more as women versus maybe non-binary feminine or trans feminine, it's going to be a lot of emphasis on passability. Passing is not for everybody, but there's some people who have a high emphasis on passing because unfortunately we live in societies that puts high emphasis on it too. So there's going to be a lot of inner criticism about externally how you look. And for a lot of trans women, it's going to be, does my voice sound okay? Does my hair look right? And, all of those external attributes. I cannot stress out how confidence is so vital. I have had clients who, if you were to just look at stereotypical, what we stereotypically gender as feminine, you would say that their voice is not in feminine range. I had clients who walked into the room with so much confidence, they radiated that nobody blinked an eye. So I think confidence is really important. And that phenomenon of fake it until you make it is true. People say it's not true, but it is true. If you psychologically think of yourself as a confident person, you walk in holding your head high, even though you're not fully there yet, eventually you'll get there because you're training your brain to drive that route of confidence versus that route of insecurity. So confidence, working on that and really realizing that you have things to be confident about is important.
I love that. And so some of the tips to being confident, do you have any of those that would help you? Like, do you believe in like the fake it till you make it? Like, just put your posture up, focus on something that you do like about yourself. Like, if you love the way your lipstick looks or your lip gloss or whatever, then focus on that versus like maybe you don't like some other feature as much. Like focusing on what you do think is like you're killing it. It looks fantastic versus on where you think you're lacking. Would you add anything else like that kind of helps you step into that
Yes.
confidence?
Yes. So this is what I would say about fake till you make it, to clarify it even more. It has to be realistic too. So
Mm-hmm.
if you are, for example, 20 pounds heavier and you really want to be 20 pounds lighter, you can't just fake it till you make it. You have to also put in the work to lose that weight, right? So you have to be realistic about things. If there's things about you that you're insecure about, that either can absolutely not change, height, maybe the size of your hands, size of your feet, maybe some other things, hair loss that you sustained as a result of testosterone. Those things, if you cannot change them realistically, you need to accept them. And the way to offset that lack of confidence over here is to increase value where you actually have it. So I have a video where I talk about it, tips how to increase confidence. And one of the things I share about myself personally is I have my own insecurities about myself. Maybe, for example, I have insecurities about my weight. I'm a heavier girl. And for the longest time, it was my insecurities. The way I offset it, because I wasn't ready to work on my weight yet, is to increase my value over here. So, for example, I knew that if I were to walk into a room full of people, and if there were like all of the individuals, women there who were amazing supermodels standing there, would that trigger me? Yes. So how do I offset that level of insecurity? I remind myself of what I have of incredible value. I have a PhD degree. I'm very specialist in what I do. I consider myself highly intelligent. How many women in that room have PhD, right? So the chances of all of them having it probably is going to be pretty rare. Is it, one can say that sounds borderline cocky, but that's really not. You basically realistically are praising the value you do have and raising it up. And you're realizing you have something to bring of value into this environment and you're offsetting something else. So I think that's really important. You have everybody has a lot of value to bring. So think about what do you have as an individual that is of value and bring it to the table and raise it up for yourself.
I love that, Dr. Z, because I know a lot of people are like, be humble, be humble, be humble. And then you feel like you can't like toot your own horn or be proud of yourself or just like feel like, hey, this is this really great thing that I contribute or that I add or that I am or that I believe or that how I act, right? And
Yeah.
so I do love that you said that because it's not being arrogant. Like if you're kind of going and being mean to people, then that's completely different than just going in and just
Yeah.
owning who you are and the value that you bring and contribute and acknowledging that that exists within you. And you can still be kind and you can still be compassionate. And that doesn't make you like an unhumble, braggy type person. And I think sometimes we get sidetracked by thinking we have to be humble and that, if we are proud of ourselves, then all
You
of a sudden we're not
have to
humble.
own it. Oh my God. I tell trans women I work with, you have to, I mean, how many people in that room have have gone through what you have gone through that type of life transformation? Probably nobody. And forget about the fact that it relates to gender, just the amount of strength it has to take, inner strength to go through that. That's phenomenal. And the fact that you're here and it didn't completely break you apart and you're not somewhere hospitalized as a result of it, that's a tremendous achievement. So I don't think that's cocky at all. I think that's owning your power, owning your strengths, owning what you actually achieved because you put in sweat and tears into it. And I think that's important.
I love that. And like that one poem that we've all heard, right? When you are confident in who you are and own who you are, you're giving the permission to everyone else around you to do the same. And so when we make ourselves small, that's not helping anyone. And so I love that knowing that we just can inspire each other, just, just being who you are. I love that. Okay, so you ready for some questions?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this person, I'm going to read out the whole one. So they said, I have a good question I have been meaning to ask for a while. I have an amazing improv community friends that are LGBT supportive 100%. How can I be brave enough to come out to my small circle of friends subtly, even though I know I will have support no matter what from them? I know I'm trans and more feminine than a guy, and I'm bi. I just don't know how to start. So I love this question because they know
so
it,
good.
right?
It's
Yes.
so good. Okay, so first of all, I'm so happy they have the support already. That's phenomenal. So here's the thing. There's no manual. Nobody has written one. There's doesn't exist one. If anybody says there's a manual how to do it, it's bullshit. There's no such manual on how to do it. There's never going to be a right time. There's never going to be a right day of the month, right day of the time. There's just going to be a time to do it. If you are thinking about doing it, that means the time has already come. And the way to do it is just to do it. Just like you came out to your LGBTQ community, you do it exact the same way. It's no difference. I always tell people, coming out is not about, you're not asking for permission, you're not seeking validation. The only reason why you are coming out is because you are informing people, you're sharing something significant in your life. That's it. That's the only reason. So you have to go in there with that, knowing that you are about to share something significant in your life. You're not here seeking permission, and you just need to do it. And that's it. And people will support you.
I love that. I love that so much. Okay, so my next question from a listener is, I'm just starting to meet other trans people and cross-dressers. How can I tell if someone's hitting on me or just being friendly?
That's a tough one because in a world, in a trans feminine world, as we know, there's a lot of individuals who people like to use name chasers is one of them, where stereotypically it's usually men who are attracted to trans women primarily for sexual pleasure, primarily because they want to also explore their own, whatever it is. The way I say to tell the difference between somebody who's maybe objectifying you versus somebody who really truly desires you. Objectification is usually very detached. You can feel that you're being treated as primarily object, one, and two, that person immediately wants to jump into bed. They're immediately only going after sex. It's almost as if they're not interested in you as a person or as a personality. They're not interested in asking you any questions that go deeper into you, who you are as a person. They're just interested in this, the physical. That's how you know you're being objectified, because they're basically just seeing the external. And that's how you can separate that. And I know that sometimes it can be difficult because I know that for a lot of trans women, there's a sense of also validation especially when men are attracted to them, even if they're themselves sexually not attracted to men, because it's such a stereotype culturally, right? If a man is attracted to a woman, suddenly it's very validating. It's very, upper pro. So I think it may feel good. And I think that's okay if you're finding somebody that objectifying you and it feels good. Don't feel guilty about it. But if you're really looking for a relationship and not just somebody to sleep with, you may have to realize that chances are this person is only looking to have an intimate relationship with you. That's it. Because there's this objectification factor. So I would say, yeah, it's usually you can tell, usually if you're getting a screenshot of somebody's genitals immediately and they're like, hey, how can we be it? I mean, does it sound like long-term partner or somebody who's really interested in you? I would say probably not.
Good points. And I also really, it kind of transitions back to your first point of don't lower your standards just because it feels good. I mean, it does feel good to have someone like compliment you or desire you or be sexually
And take
attracted
it,
to you.
enjoy it, right? And that's
Yes.
okay. If they're hitting on you, you're like, oh, all right, well, this chaser is hitting on me, all right, but you don't really have to act on it.
Mm, I love
Mhm.
that. Yes, yes, yes. Do you have any tips on if I'm just new to dating, how I could, like, if I met someone out in person and not online, how I could let them know that I'm romantically interested without coming on too strong?
Mm. Oof. I'm thinking how tough that is because we're all so different, right? Some of us like to tell right away. For me, for example, when I was dating back then, I've been married now for 17 years, but when my old past dates, I immediately just instinctively know if the person is for me or not, and I move really fast. So everybody's different. You have to trust how you are as a person. If you're the type of personality that likes to just trust your gut feelings and your intuition, and you just want to tell a person right away, tell them right away. Why? Because you're also telling the person who you are. You're letting them know, hey, I have an impulsive side to me. And you're allowing this person to decide whether that's the right fit for them too. You see what I mean? So again, everything is really at a level of discernment when you go out. I know that there's fear, you might scare somebody away, but if you tend to be an impulsive personality, you just want to tell somebody immediately, and if you're going to hold it in because you're afraid it's going to slip away, and then you're in a relationship with them and you do some other things that are impulsive, and they're like, oh, I don't know, that's really impulsive. I really like to think about it and sleep. And you're like, no, come on, let's go out with you. No, we really got to think about it. Again, you see, that's not going to work. So just be yourself. If you got us telling you on the first date, you want to tell them you love them, tell them. Are you going to scare them? You're going to scare the wrong person, and you're going to attract the right one.
I love that. Very, very good to think about. Because that is scary for us to sometimes be so honest right away because we are scared to scare someone away. But then if you think about, well, no, the right person will receive that or have a great discussion around it. Like, right, it's just there's so many different layers of being your authentic self that you're really talking about today, and I absolutely love it.
Hmm.
Okay, so somebody wanted to know, I'm just going to read you their whole question. So, why do I feel like this? In the past, I tried to ignore it, just regressed and came back worse. I ignored it dozens of times in my life. I didn't choose to feel this way since I was a kid. Is it my genetic makeup?
Generally speaking, is there something that we ignore and it tends to come back to us again and again and again? That's a sign. It's either a sign there's something to look at, something to address, or it's a sign that's actually who we are. And I know that as scary as it might be, if it's keep coming back to you, I mean, it's like me wearing black collar. Every time I buy occasionally a colored print, I'm like, oh my God, what the hell was I thinking? This is so not me. Every time my husband is like I got the green iPhone case, and it's pretty dark green color, and he's like, no, you should go. I'm like, no, it looks so good, hunter green, hunter green. The next day, like, oh shit, what was I thinking? I hate it. Why didn't I just stick to black? So that's the thing. There's patterns, there's things about ourselves that are consistent, and that's one of those things. If things are coming up, even though they're scary to address or you're concerned about it, it's coming up for a reason. And I really encourage the person to look at those things.
I love that. That's so true. Because it will keep coming up until you listen to it, right?
Yes.
Until you
Yeah.
acknowledge it and listen to it and either do something with it or, it'll just keep coming up. I love that. Love that. Okay, so Dr. Z, I know that you offer therapy sessions and you also do consulting and coaching depending on where the individual lives and what state. So can you just share a little bit of like what a session with you looks like? And because I do know there are some people who would really benefit from working with you and just getting to be just in a session with you and just to dive into themselves with your wisdom and your everything that
Mhm.
you've learned and observed over the years. So how does a session with you look and where can people schedule with you?
So I always tell people that I am an unorthodox psychologist. I work very different than most psychologists or most therapists. Um, the reason why I work very differently is for a few reasons. One, my personality is direct. I tend to be very open, upfront person. I'm not afraid to share what I see. I'm not afraid to ask direct questions. So that's already part of my personality. Two, I'm a strong believer that for individuals who are struggling with gender dysphoria, you don't need to spend years and years in therapy. I'm a strong believer that because so much of what you're struggling with has to do with trying to figure out how to reconcile those things with or without transition within yourself, and then go out there and saturate yourself with experiences once you're more comfortable with yourself, some things that a therapeutic space cannot give you. So for those two reasons, my nature, how I am, my temperament, and also my belief in how therapy should be for transgender individuals, sessions with me are the direct and the very high punched. I always tell people that it's almost as if you haven't developed your wisdom teeth yet to be able to break down, for example, heavy means like filet mignon, but I'll be giving you filet mignon, and then you're going to have to digest and process. But I'll be giving you a lot of punched information. So it's kind of really, really packed. That's why I also offer long-term therapy, which is long-term with me is a relative term, right? Because people don't stay with me longer than maybe 2 years, probably the longest. And then I just graduate people. I say, you got to go out there and live your life. You just got to go in there and experience things. And then a short-term high punch sessions for people who just really need to clarify their identity or know who they are. And they're like, hey, I want a 6 months direct plan, how to approach transition, exactly what I need to do, how to do it, and then I can go out and do it. So it's very unorthodox because I know the therapy, we're accustomed to therapists as a blank slate. They reflect back how you feel, they ask you 100 times how you feel. All of those things, they don't share a lot with you. I'm not like that. I'm not afraid to tell people, and I have told many people who, especially questioning their gender, especially young adults I work with, not afraid to tell them, this doesn't exactly sound like a transgender identity issue. Sounds like this or that. So I'm not afraid. I'm definitely not a gatekeeper, but I'm definitely not an overly affirming, cheerleader. I'm a discerning, I consider myself a discerning therapist where I really want to do justice by you, and I really want to help you figure things out. Of course, with a lot of adults, for me, it's easy because they have consistent history of struggling with dysphoria. And it's more of me confirming to them, like, yes, what you know about yourself is true. So that's what it looks like with me. If people want to work with me, they're welcome to check out my website and set up 15-minute complimentary consult, because I screen everybody on a phone, because I need to, again, reiterate to people, I'm direct, I want to make sure they're a good fit, and I want to make sure they have gender dysphoria issue, and I can really help. And, sometimes I screen people on phone and they need more gentler, more like hand-holding touch. And I tell them, like, we're not going to match well together. Again, this is like dating. I'm not rejecting you, but I'm redirecting you because I know you're going to waste your money with me. I'm going to be too much for you. So you need somebody else. And I have people to refer if they need that particular approach.
I love that. And I love your metaphors. You have such great metaphors that you share. They're so good.
Thank you.
Yes,
I
and you
love
can,
metaphors.
yes, and they're really good ones. And you can just see your directness, which I do find refreshing. Like, I love directness, but I can see how some people are like, oh no, this is too direct. I'm not ready for that yet. And so I love that you are just open with that and you don't shift that, because you're just demonstrating also like how to be in your authentic self, even just the way that you work. So
yeah, there's, directness doesn't have to be taken for bulldozing, right? You can be direct and kind and gentle. And I have people who tell me, okay, I know what I need to do, but I'm still afraid. And that's okay. We'll work through your resistance, and I will name it that this is what you're afraid of. And I'm not going to speed up with you, Zan, because I know that you're not there yet, but I will also be direct and vocalizing, this is why things are not happening to you the way you see for a lot of people on social media, and you want it to happen like yesterday because you have this fears holding you back, and that's okay.
yes. And I love that clarification that you can be direct and still very kind and compassionate.
Yes.
You're not like bulldozing them or being mean to them. You're just being honest and maybe saying something that, and I think that's what people pay you for too, is like, they don't want you to just say what they want to hear. You're helping them dig deeper and move through their process instead of staying stuck or regressing. So I like that.
I think it's really important to value people's money and also value my time. And I'm not cheap. So, and I know that I'm not cheap. So I take my job with a lot of integrity. And that's why also they're so direct in terms of my session times, because I don't want to waste your money. And I don't want to waste your time. I also don't want to waste my time as well. So there's a lot of those things going in terms of just how I am as a person. And of course, for people who can't have access to my services, there's so much on my YouTube channel. Every video that I produce is the standalone topic, and it's exact the same depth content that I would give anybody in a session. So it's not what I call fish content, where it's so surfacey, just so you can get people into the door, right? No, it's exact the same expertise content that you would otherwise pay me for. You know, paying is just for people who just need the direct one-on-one.
Yeah. Yeah, your content is really, really phenomenal because I've watched some of your videos,
Thank you.
especially after knowing that, like, I wanted to invite you on. And then after you said yes, I was like, let's definitely dive in. And I do love that it is actually a lot of value that you're providing. It isn't just like, basic surface level stuff. It is real answers. You're honest, you're direct, you're caring, you're compassionate, you're everything that I think is just absolutely wonderful, which reminds me that I asked the AI app. Have you heard of this AI app that people are using, this little chat thing?
I think so. That's where you can ask some questions, and they based on those they can create the future.
Well, it can create like just words or songs or anything. So I had to create a song for you.
You did. Oh my! What did you ask, by the way? This
I,
is
I,
fascinating.
I said, can you create a song for Dr. Z, PhD, who's a specialist in a transgender specialist? And so it created a song. So I'm going to read it to you in a second. But I really also wanted to say, so if you do want to check out Dr. Z's YouTube channel, it's Dr. Z, PhD. And your website is drzphd.com, correct?
Everything is Dr. Z PhD. I keep it pretty simple.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to read to you the AI song that I came up with. Okay. If I could sing, I'd sing, but my voice isn't that pretty for singing. Okay. So Dr. Z, PhD, a specialist in her field, helping those who need it with empathy and yield. Transgender lives are in her hands, guiding them through their personal lands. With knowledge and care, she leads the way for those who are searching day by day. Dr. Z, PhD, a beacon of hope. For the transgender community, she helps them cope. She understands the struggles they face and helps to lift them out of their mental space. A listening ear and a helping hand, Dr. Z, PhD, is a true friend. With knowledge and care, she leads the way for those who are searching day by day. Dr. Z, PhD, a beacon of hope. For the transgender community, she helps them cope. So here's to Dr. Z, PhD, a true leader in the community. May her work continue to flourish. For the transgender community, she is cherished.
Oh my God. I gotta say, for somebody who is as confident in myself and in the values that I bring, that is too much.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, that is too much. I think it's so important when, especially professionals specialize in something, and there's not many other people who specialize in it, to share your knowledge with the public who are so desperately looking for those answers, especially today when there's so much information that is confusing, when there's so many voices. Anybody today that has a platform feels like they can amplify their voice and they have something of value, and they don't. Not every opinion is a good opinion. Some opinions are just that they're stinky opinions and they stink. So I'm just really grateful to be living in this world where I have access to have my platform and I have access to megaphone and to be able to share patterns and things that I observe to help people who, I always say, you don't even need gender therapists. If you resonate with any of my videos, take it to any therapist and just say, hey, let's dissect this. This is what resonated with me. This is what raised some questions in me, and work through it. So I'm just, that was like too, I'm like, too much.
I knew you would think that after I read it and I was like, she's gonna be like, that is way too much credit right there. Like
I'm definitely not leaving any kind of legacy here. It's really genuinely amazing to help. When I get feedback on my channel from people where the content has been helpful to them, that's like priceless. You cannot put a price value on that. To me, that it's such a, I remember I had somebody who one time told me, she just was starting out with her business and she asked me for advice. I said, the best thing you can do is start putting your content out there for free and don't be afraid to give you best content for free. And she said, well, that makes no sense. Who will ever pay me then for it? And yada, yada, yada. And I said, you don't understand. There are always going to be people who are going to want to work with you one-on-one. It's invaluable to put stuff out there because not only are you showing people that you know what you're talking about, one, but two, what an amazing karma. I mean, you're like swimming in karma of positivity and people being grateful. That's so beautiful. Like that's phenomenal for your health, phenomenal for your whole existence as a human being and for your spirit. So I'm just, yeah. So I wouldn't say big and a whole, more like, karmic exchange for all even here. I appreciate what the community gives me, and I'm grateful that I can give them back.
Yes, I agree with you. There is something really magical about just like the gratitude and the appreciation and also giving. So I'm in the same camp as you, like give your best, and then people will still want to work with you. It really does bother me when people just give like, not even good value. And I'm like, I don't understand, like, why aren't you giving? So I used to have a podcast and I'd have people and I'd ask certain questions, like some tools. Well, I don't want to give the tools because then no one's going to work with me. And I was like, then why are you on my podcast if you're can't, give any tools?
No, give. You have to give. I really believe that the whole purpose of humanity, for us humans to exist, is kindness. We are so fucking unkind today. Like so many, just unkind in so many different ways. From simple comments, somebody has to put a nasty comment. They don't even know how much damage to do to somebody else reading that comment. So I just think kindness, like how hard is it? Just share. If you can't share, just be kind. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything. Go home, vent privately. That's okay. Have a glass of wine and bitch and complain, but do it privately so nobody has to be part of it.
Yes, I agree with you so much, Dr. Z. Kindness is such a beautiful thing. And even though the AI might have felt a little too over exaggerated or too much.
I think they were looking at different Dr. Z PhD.
I do believe that you are making a huge impact in the world for the better. Just like the positivity, the directness, the love, the just permission and space for people to learn and be themselves is beautifully impactful. And it is something we need in this world. And so
do you. Right back at you.
Oh,
so do you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate you immensely. And I just want to thank you so much for this time, because I know everyone who listens to this is going to be elevated and they're going to begin to look at themselves differently. Even if today they can't take it all in, it's planting those seeds and it's going to grow a little bit more every day. And so I just appreciate you immensely. And I look forward to, just continuing to get to know you and following your content and your wisdom and just knowing that you exist out there. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And wait till I interview you on my channel. So you viewers are going to have to stand for that. So, and I will have an very interesting question based on what you do, because I know you do hypnotherapy and had a lot of people ask me whether hypnosis is effective for their getting in touch with their gender identity. So it'll be, and I'm not a hypnotist, so it'll be great to have you on. So yeah, so you and I are going to meet again.
Good, wonderful. I know, I hope we keep in touch. So is there any final thoughts you wanted to share before we wrap up? Is there anything else, one last tip, or you feel good?
So I do have one last tip. So
okay, go for it.
So the last tip is this: for anybody who's listening, don't be afraid to create your world. Don't be afraid to create exactly the world you want. We each have our own worlds. So don't be afraid to go after it. Don't be the person that is doing anybody favors. Again, you have so much to offer. So just walk into the world knowing that you're building your own reality, and build it based on your own standards and raise them up.
That's so good. I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Well, thank you so much for joining. If you stayed this long, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, go subscribe to Dr. Z if you haven't already, and say hi in the comments. Thank you so much. I am sending you endless love, and before you go, say it with me. I am enough, I matter, I make a difference. My life is important. And I get to be me. And I get to have incredible, yummy, wonderful, intimate friendships and romantic relationships. See you next time.